Hi, welcome back again to the Great Academy. We continue our exploration of the poet D.H. Lawrence here. So, a reading of the poem The Mosquito. So, it's a long, dramatic poem. It's an encounter poem between a human and a minute creature. Um, so, it begins with this very dramatic question: when did you start your tricks, monsieur? Monsieur? So, on the right of this page, you will see that I have commenting on a lot of the words and phrases. The opening question, therefore, is, as I said, a rhetorical one. It creates a lively mood and begins a dramatic encounter. The word monsieur as well is quite interesting. It gives a sense of a foreigner, of a particular kind, slightly exotic back then, for an Englishman looking upon a sort of a fancy French monsieur. Mischievous French performer, perhaps. The word tricks there linked to monsieur can be linked to devilry below. So, next question. What do you stand on such high legs for? So that, there's a sense of a circus clown with the stilts standing on high legs. Why are you doing that? What are you up to? Why this length of shredded shank? Your exaltation, you exaltation. So the shredded shank really is a clever reference to the thinness of the creature and its frailty, which is again echoed, mentioned below. You exaltation, it could be referred to the sense of majesty that the mosquito has as it seems to dominate. Shows the mental state of the human who becomes aware of a mosquito maybe stalking him. Exaltation to suggest the exaggerated self satisfaction, maybe that the mosquito feels in anticipation of what it's going to do. But it's a typical of Lawrence, a startling term to use for the most minute, despised insect, the lowest of the low, referring to it as you would refer to a kind of a divinity, really, you exaltation. So, and then he persists with the questions, this dramatic kind of debate situation. Is it so that you shall lift your center of gravity upwards and weigh no more than air as you alight upon me, stand upon me weightless? You phantom! So, this long rhetorical question seems to feature a scientific term, center of gravity, and that's again typical of the imagist type of poets, um, where they introduce language that might have been considered unpoetic previously. It may be a pun to on the gravity of the situation, as the mosquito poses a very grave challenge to the human who expects to have a very severe itch after its encounter with this rival. And again, we can see that there is reference quite a bit there to the notion of weight. Three allusions to weight for this almost immaterial creature. Thus, again, it's precise language, isn't it? But it's also comical. Great and amusing notion. And of course, the phantom. That's ironic, like a phantom with a center of gravity. It's kind of a humorous paradox, really. That is so. Lawrence is enjoying himself as he composes this and amusing the reader, the listener to the poem. This kind of very dramatic, kind of almost prose poem. But if you look at all the repetitions here and that will be pointed out as the poem develops, there's a sort of a rhythm and a kind of a pattern created by all these references. So many of what's highlighted there are echoed further below, are already echoed within, the kind of the lines or the little stanza form that they are presented in. Again, loose stanza form. So each of them so far consisting of one sentence in about three lines of varying length. So here's another, sort of trio of lines. I heard a woman call you the winged victory. Now, the winged victory, it's a classical allusion to Nike, right? Nike, the Greek goddess of victory. And it's kind of an ironical exaggeration, but maybe capturing the initial fear of the human. I heard a woman call you winged victory in sluggish Venice. So maybe that actually did happen. Maybe it was Frida who made a joke. And sluggish Venice, of course, is the state of the muggy weather, like the humid, warm kind of weather in which the mosquitoes triumph and thrive, and where they exact the biggest price on humans with it itch and lumps. So the sense is the woman senses that the mosquito all is one. So there's a sense of what's the word? What would you call it there? Anticipation, and we're being signaled that the mosquito will win. But what will happen by the end of the poem? You probably know already. You turn your head towards her tail and smile. Now, this line sort of implies the triumphalism of the mosquito, as if it's supremely confident, and there's sort of a mocking tone about it too. Mocking, as if the mosquito is mocking the human. But when you look at by the end of the poem, you feel that the poet is also mocking this supremely confident mosquito. Another set of three lines, one all built around one question. How can you put so much devilry, echo of tricks above, but also shows admiration for the surprising skill and creativity of the antagonistic insect, yeah? Into how can you put so much devilry into that translucent phantom shred of a failed corpus? Translucent meaning almost you could see through it. Phantom, that's the second reference to phantom. Phantom is because it's so almost immaterial, so weightless, so almost so invisible of a frail corpus, a very weak body. I use in the Latin, again, it's kind of a very unusual image, but a very specific image. Yet there's a sort of a contradiction there because corpus is almost like the opposite of phantom. Is it a body at all? But the frailty captures the physical description already given. Queer with your thin wings and your streaming legs. That's a word that's used a bit in the poem. It's queer, and it's used differently then. Today it means your identity as a homosexual man or woman, and it's a very acceptable term, LGBT term. For a long time, it was a very pejorative term, of course, and went out of fashion as a nasty term. But it's just amusing the way language actually goes through different kind of courses of its meaning over the generations. But anyway, the mosquito has this oddness about it, this queerness about it in its behaviour, which are thin wings in your lip and your streaming legs, an echo of the physicality mentioned above. How you sail like a heron, nice similes here, or a dull clot of air. And clot anticipates, of course, that it will have blood in it, the blood of the speaker later, and it feeds off the scalp. And nothingness at the same time echoes phantom. So, I could say, just to get that there, I've written, if you want to see the note, clot foreshadows the blood smear near the end. So, foreshadowing is an interesting feature of drama, isn't it, as well? And the nothingness, you can see my note on that there. A deceptive guise prompting the speaker to underestimate the insect. It's a nothingness. It's an attempt to insult or impugn the antagonist of the drama also. A nothingness. Pretend dismissal. But of course the speaker is completely on edge and alert to the threat of the mosquito. But it's just trying to use insult. That alarm that's ringing could represent coincidentally the alarm that one feels when a mosquito enters the equation. Anyway, resuming after that providential interruption. Yet, what an aura surrounds you. Now, aura is interesting there. It suggests that the reputation of the mosquito is what gives it its power. And of course, then the very sound of it, like the sudden sound we heard there a moment ago, can sort of create a feeling of alertness. I guess, despite the apparent weakness of the adversary, it has an aura about it that intimidates the human. And aura is repeated in the next line for rhythm and for emphasis. Your little evil aura, prowling and casting a numbness in my mind. Prowling, mosquito as the hunter, suggesting the mosquito and that the human is the hunted. Now, is that foreshadowing the ending, or will that lead to a reversal? We will see. You have an idea. This is your trick. Now, that's a repetition of an earlier, of the earlier tricks. Again, part of the patterning of the poem. Filthy magic. Magic is also sort of an echo of trick, but also a repetition of what was implied above. Invisibility, that sort of reminds us of the phantom. um, invisibility, and then an aesthetic power. So, so I'm suggesting there that with the language here that it's building up his antagonist, so as to increase the sense of final triumph, which happens at the end in the reversal. Just a sense of the echo of numbness above. And then again, that's an echo, isn't it, of both aesthetic and numbness. So there's a lot of that happening right throughout the poem. It's what gives the poem its rhythm, its poetic fluency, its continuity, its artistic coherence. But now I know your game. But I know your game now is tricky sorcerer. So the word now suggests that the mentality of the speaker is coming around and he's switching from being hunted to standing up for himself, to he's gaining confidence. And again, we have the notion of sorcerer, which echoes many similar words above. Sorcerer, like magic, magician. Queer, again, look how many times has that been used. So, I'm just saying there, no, do you want to count how many times this word is used in the poem as part of the patterning? How you stalk, again, that echoes the word prowl above, doesn't it? And the word prowl beside it. In circles and evasions, kind of very evocative kind of language, isn't it? And of course, you have the lovely assonance of it too. The E's in that line create a sort of a certain sound pattern as well. Music. So, but that's notion of a kind of a battle, a tactical battle, which is there throughout the poem, is strongly emphasized in this line. The notion of this kind of two generals sort of sizing each other up. And the word gowl here, of course, that's something that loves blood, especially the blood of something dead. So it's deepening the macabre skill and persona of the antagonistic insect. It's an example of the use of exaggeration to lend kudos to the forthcoming victory that the actual speaker will have, and it echoes phantom as well. And winged victory is a repetition again, and how many times is that used? And generally, how many times are wings used? I mean, they're very appropriate because in fact, it's the mechanism of the wings of the insect that gives it its kind of a dreaded and sort of notorious humming, high humming sound. So we go with our reading. So the long thin shanks. Do you want to look up above and see what does that directly echo? Eye me sideways again. That sense of circling kind of rivals. Would you agree? It's a dramatic touch. Would you say that really the mosquito is eyeing him sideways, like the way a wolf might eye its sneakily watch its target? So do you think that's an actual touch, or is it dramatic and part of the growing comedy? Whatever you think. You spec, another whimsical insult, So what above was Monsieur, and something kind of exotic is now suddenly reduced. There's a sense of disrespect and an attempt now to provoke the rival. The speaker has grown in confidence and is becoming more assertive. I hate the way you lurch sideways. I hate the way you lurch off sideways into the air. Now, that's a very amusing and quite a good capture of the way a mosquito kind of flies in a kind of a jumping, darting way. So it's rather accurate, typical of the Imagist poets, but it's rather comical as well in Lawrence's typical way and part of the drama. Having read my thoughts against you. So there's a pretense, of course, that this mental battle continues, that he's up against even a superior rival again, that the tension is maintained. Come then. And by the way, look, there was a part of the poem in two lines. So unlike most of the rest of it, which is in three line, you could say sort of loose units of three lines, all is with one sentence. Very many of them were questions at the start, but now they are statements. Come then, let us play at unawares. That notion of This notion of unawares. You'll see it echoed below in a moment. Come, let us play at unawares and see who wins in the sly game of bluff, man or mosquito. So again, that the battle is being kind of prepared for. The contest is sort of evening up now, man or mosquito. It's almost like the title of a kind of a cheap novel, man or mosquito. And somebody might say to somebody trying to provoke a fight, "Are you a man or a mouse?" That would have been said many times in the past. Battle is on, and there's a sense almost of like a matador. See who wins this game. Let us play it unawares. So the matador goads his target, you could say, as if the human speaker is setting the terms for the insect's attack. And what then happens? The pretense of being master all the time. So both sides are now somehow kind of been really macho about it. The passive, seemingly weak speaker is now kind of almost like beating his chest, like and say, "Who wins in this sly game of bluff?" So there's a whole lot of deception that's now being kind of owned up to as well in the drama. And then the kind of fake abstract equality between them. You don't know that I exist, and I don't know that you exist. And there is a sense maybe that the infinitesimal sort of brain of the phantom slender mosquito probably can't reach knowledge of what it is. It's probably just drawn by its senses, to sense of smell to where the blood is, and it doesn't realize it's kind of inconveniencing a gigantic creature. I suppose that's fairly true, actually. So that's a comical kind of factual detail that's accurate, put in lovely simple language by Lawrence. And I don't know that you exist, but of course he does. I mean, but that's the bluffing, isn't it? That's echoing the bluffing above. Now then, so we're getting very close to the confrontation. And then this word trump. It is your trump. It is your hateful little trump. You pointed fiend, which shakes my sudden blood to hatred of you. It is your small, high, faithful bugle in my ear. So trump, and bugle are all referring to, in fact, the humming sound, the high-pitched humming sound that's a giveaway. And that makes the mosquito all the more hateful. So the dialogue makes all this much more dramatic and fun than just a kind of a flat, prosaic description of it, like I'm almost unnecessarily doing here. You see, the fiend is an echo of devil. Again, it's dramatic. And the bugle, of course, was a military term, going back to that side of it. The echo of the two trumps above, a sensual detail and a vanity portrayed as the weakness of his opponent. You see, it's as if the mosquito is pretending he's kind of trying to. It's like he's sort of humanizing the mosquito as something that's so tactical, so militaristic that it has a formal bugle to announce the imminence of the attack, like in traditional old battles, and to motivate the troops, etc., and to terrify the enemy. So that he's ascribing all of that to the sound that the mosquito makes, but it's hateful. But then he asks, "Why do you do it?" Because it's not really that good a thing to do. Surely it's bad policy. The high pitched humming is a warning, a giveaway. So alerts the human, which is very true actually. So again, it's a funny kind of a development of the thought of the poem. To say you can't help it, but of course it can't because it's just the wings going fast. If that is so, then I believe a little in providence. Providence is a word for luck, but it also suggests divine help in a comical way, protecting the innocent. Right? How innocent is the speaker at the end of the poem? That's another issue, isn't it? But it sounds so amazingly like a slogan too, a yell of triumph as you snatch my scalp. So it looks like there's an admission there that there's some kind of a battle, won by the mosquito that it seems to have left a mark, an itch on his head, where it scraped his scalp for blood, red blood. The insect antagonist is portrayed in as kind of as triumphing, super magical, forbidden liquor. That's what the blood is then portrayed as. So it's an echo of above references. It adds drama as well, and it sort of it adds a certain mystique to the blood, to what's being fought over. The blood is forbidden liquor that the mosquito is breaking a taboo by taking the blood and would have to pay the consequence of it. I behold you stand, and then I behold you stand. So that means he spots the mosquito on a wall or somewhere. I behold you stand for a second, then spasmed in oblivion. That's a very nice way of capturing how the mosquito is sort of unaware of anything around it because it's in a state of absolute pleasure. It's kind of like orgasmic, obscenely ecstasy. And that's what that phrase means as well. It's sort of very luxurious language, capturing the pleasure experience by the mosquito. It's also the final moment of detection as the insect abandons itself and abandons it makes itself totally vulnerable, faithfully to its seeming ecstatic conquest. My blood, sucking loud blood, my blood echoes again. And then there's no longer the humming sound, the trump. Such silence, such suspended transport. Transport is kind of a high emotion, maybe a high sensation of pleasure, suspended. Such gorging, such obscenity of trespass. Again, the violation of the skin in his forehead to take the blood is a trespass, an obscenity linked to echoing the language above. And then it seems that this has weakened the capacity of the mosquito to lurch away, and now it just staggers, an echo of that lurch. As well you may. Only your accursed frailty, your own high imponderable weightlessness saves you, wafts you away by the very draught my anger makes in its snatching. Now that's very clever. That as he tried to just lay hands on the mosquito, it made one more kind of darting escape, and he attributes its ability to escape because of the waft of air that in the swipe of his hand or whatever, the very draft my anger makes in its attempt to snatch you. That's what saved the mosquito, whom he addresses directly there, saves you. But the flight is a staggering flight. Um, echoes the word lurch from earlier, and the hairy frailty echoes again some earlier physical description. So there's plenty of echo. Weightlessness echoes that was it the second or third little sort of verse paragraph above about center of gravity and weight and weightlessness. And then it breaks into its humming again, a pain of derision. A pain is like a poem of triumph. So the humming seems to hum away again in triumph, which echoes the sense the speaker mentioned of being mocked earlier. You winged blood drop. Now that's a significant change from it echoes winged victory, but recognizes that the mosquito is really a paltry antagonist now that the fear has been replaced by anger. So when the speaker was intimidated and dominated by fear of the mosquito, he was relatively powerless. But now that he's angry, now that means he is ready to really kind of take on this mosquito antagonist and deal with it. The anger is more enabling than fear, which is probably very true. Can I not overtake you? Is gaining in confidence. Are you not? Or are you one too many for me? Winged victory? Are you? Echoing above, but beginning to doubt that his rival really is all he was kind of claimed to be by that woman in Venice. Am I not mosquito enough to have mosquito you? Clever adoption of the language, very comical. So a daring bit of hubris on the part of the speaker, who hints that he may be ultimately in control, of course, after all, in this game of man and insect. And then a surprise, the last three lines. Queer what a big stain my sucked blood makes beside the infinitesimal faint smear of you. Queer what a dim, dark smudge you have disappeared into. So what we've got here is the ending, but really it's the aftermath of something else that isn't fully described. It's what I would call the aftermath of the violent retribution, after the climax of the drama, bypassing the dramatic moment of revenge and destruction of the antagonist. So it's a final resolution. Usually in drama you have a climax and then just the very ending, which is the resolution. There's almost a kind of a shock, a reversal. Again, it went against what was foreshadowed at the start, but which was foreshadowed further into the poem. What a big stain my sucked blood makes. So it's not that the mosquito makes the stain, but my sucked blood. Beside the infinitesimal faint smear of you. So there's a tiny, tiny outline of the crushed Mosquito inside the smear of blood of the speaker that's on the wall. Very accurate description. Again, the precision of the images is observable here. But Monsieur has been reduced to a smear. And, what a dim, again, the rhetorical question. The repeated what a, again, is rhetorical, like at the start of the poem. And also echoes the language of fairy tales, doesn't it? There are two of them there. What a big stain, what a dim dark smudge, what big teeth you have. It has that kind of a echo, the fairy tale type of echo in it, that you have disappeared into. An ironic ending, the sudden twist as the speaker gloats. And then the poem is over. Now, really, it's a beautiful poem. And you might say to yourself, why did I bother watching this video? Because I could just get the whole sense of the poem, the exquisite drama, by reading it. And it's true. We murder to dissect, when we criticize literary works. But from the point of view of teaching and learning and being able to write about it, sometimes that sort of help is needed, even if it does seem to reduce a very poem like this to a dark smudge. With that, then I leave you and wish you happy learning until I meet you again on another presentation. Over and out from the Great Academy.